Welcome to Digital After Dark with your hosts, Matt and Andrew.
Hello, and welcome back to another Digital After Dark. I'm your host, Andrew, joined always by Matt.
Hello.
Today, it's been a while, but we finally want to go over the recap of Measurecamp London 2025 that took place last month. It's been, I think it's almost exactly 1 month since it actually took place. No, in 4 more days. I had to stop and do the math. It's almost, 8:30. I think everyone can excuse my math.
After a full day at work.
Yes. But first, I just want to start off with just the logo. I absolutely loved it. I don't know if it's better than the cat from last year, but there was a theme of an octopus on this one, most because they got to talk about what does each of the tentacles mean. But also, last year they gave away some octopuses as prizes that everyone absolutely loved. So I think they were just trying to keep to the theme of those octopuses last year. Now, Matt, I believe you probably did go to the introduction session, or at least caught the tail end of it. Am I right?
I didn't know, so with it being on a Saturday, I got a train down from Leeds, so I got in about, I think about 9:30, maybe 10. But it was just as the intro session was wrapping up.
Then it was a little after 10 because the intro started, I think it was just about 10 o'clock.
Well, you were back on the desk as well, actually, because you sorted out my attendee card. So if you were in the intro session, it must have been after it finished by the time I arrived.
I never did join the intro, so
Okay.
so I mean, overall, for starters, I do want to start giving some shout outs. So I do want to give a special shout out to Keely, Charles, and Tim, because they are the main volunteers for Measurecamp, and I could tell you that they worked unbelievably hard on this behind the scenes. I got more involved on the day of in helping people out that needed help there on the day, and try to feed a little bit on the WhatsApp group that they created. But I know Keely was working 6 months beforehand, so they were talking about this back in March.
Well, it's a massive effort. I mean, let's take a step back. So, Andrew, you've got more of the history than I have. I expect. I'm sure that everybody who's watching this will know what Measurecamp is, but just in case, what is Measurecamp? I can see it's the 18th London edition. So why don't you give us a bit of a potted history just of Measurecamp and what it is?
I can. I remember when we talked about Measurecamp last year on this same podcast, I did give the history back then, but Measurecamp was a brainchild of Peter O'Neill, and he essentially admitted that he started this because he always wanted to speak at a conference, but no one would ever invite him to speak at a conference, and he blamed it on his Australian accent. I jokingly told him, "You know what? That's kind of like saying, I really feel like having peanuts. I'm gonna go buy a 747 just so I can get some free peanuts." But overall, it's not an actual conference. It's known as a unconference because there are no guaranteed sessions that you know of beforehand. So the only thing that you know guaranteed is there will be an introduction where they talk about what is Measurecamp and what to expect from it. And then there will be a closing ceremony at the end. Everything else in the middle is decided by the people who are showing up, deciding they want to go and present.
And this is 18 years now, so this is number 18.
No,
Or this is it even longer?
nope, less.
Okay.
So,
Go on.
because I haven't been in digital analytics for 18 years, and I was invited to the very first one. So previously, when it first started, this was held every 6 months. So I didn't join the first one, if I recall correctly. I think I only joined the third or the fourth one, and it was held in Mozilla Firefox's headquarters. They probably had maybe 80 odd people who showed up. So it was significantly smaller than what it is now. So, and they would hold it every 6 months. So there was always a winter one and a summer one.
And I think with the size of it now, once a year is about given its volunteering and the monumental effort that goes into putting it on. And you can really tell, like, when you go down and you see it, and the level of professionalism that's gone into setting the thing up, and getting all the food sorted out, making making sure everybody's fed, making sure all the stalls are set up. So we sponsored last year. So we didn't do this year, but we sponsored last year.
2 years ago.
2 years ago. Wow, my God. Yeah, 23, you're right.
Yes.
But I remember with that and turning up early and getting everything set up. God, time flies, doesn't it? But yeah, it's an absolutely massive effort that goes into it. And the thing I really like about it is the community element of it, because it is that analytics community. It's people coming together and sharing, and the people volunteering, like yourself, Andrew, volunteering on the doors, and supporting people and helping them out and handing out the merch, and then just the merch as well. Like, I've got 3 Measurecamp hoodies now, and I still wear them all. It's just basically that's my outdoor clothing sorted. Obviously I wear trousers, but that's a different matter.
Oh, the mental images. No, so and back then, whenever it came to lunch, it was just some pizza that got delivered. There was no breakfast. It was very informal, and to be honest, it was a little bit more cozy. I remember that when we were meeting, we just met in the little foyer. Some people were sitting in beanbag chairs, so it was very informal, and I really enjoyed it. Um, but now the size, I believe they said it's the largest measure camp they've had so far this year. So it was, I believe, over 450 people attended, and there were still so many who didn't attend. So they always give out more tickets because they know that they're not going to have everyone show up.
Well, that's another thing, isn't it? It's free, of course.
It it is free, except for you're giving up your time. It's on a Saturday. So a lot of people I talk to, they talk about that, oh, they will go to this if it was during the week. But the problem is, most of the people who are going are probably going to be more on the consultant side, which means if they go during the week, it's costing them money because they're not working.
I think as well, I like the fact that it's on the weekend. So well, there are many things that I like about Measurecamp, which is why I make the effort to come down from Leeds and get the train down. And a few times I've stopped over, and a few times I've come down and gone back in the same day. And it's always like a 4 a.m. start or a 5 a.m. start to get out there. And I think I rode my bike down this time. So like rode my bike down to the city centre and then got the train. Obviously didn't ride my bike down to London. That's a bit too far.
That's dedication if you did.
That's that's more of a Steve Carroll thing from DMPG,
Yeah,
Havas, but because yeah, he does Iron Man and things like that.
Mhm.
I ride to town and back. That's about the extent. Um, but I like the fact that it's on a Saturday. I think that if you are, it's more of the community feel. Firstly, it's free, so I think that's huge. Like you make the effort, but that you don't need particularly a monetary outlay unless you need to travel. But it's free to get in, which I think is fantastic. And then it's on a Saturday, so you've made it out. You really want to be there. If you're going to be there, you've not had to pay money, but you really want to be there. It's a commitment in time and effort and desire to just be there and attend. And so the people who are there aren't there because they've kind of been forced to go there or because of any other reason. There's no sort of money involved. You're there because you want to be there, and that really shines through with with how just the whole vibe. I really enjoy it, and that's where I'm gonna as long as they keep doing them, I'm gonna keep going to them.
Yep. And I always highly suggest to people that if they're part of my team, that they should make an effort to go because I do think it's very worthwhile. And I remember Kevin whenever he first went, and this was before they held it where they have it now. Um, they actually interviewed him because he was a new person, and he talked about, what, I've never thought about coming because it was on Saturday. I was like, do I really want to give up my own personal time? But after being here, I'm glad I did, and I'll keep coming.
I think that's the point. You bring it home. Is you're giving up your personal time, which means that in order to attend, you're personally invested.
Yeah.
And that's a really good. It's just a one-liner, but that it really explains it. You're giving up your personal time. and rightly so. It's a fantastic place.
Yep. So one of the things they talk about Measurecamp is you only get as much as you give into it. So it's going to be community led. It's about the people who are joining, who is giving all of the information out or arranging to have a talk about something at a certain time in a served room. So there is a huge board that will be put up that people go and put the cards on to say that they want to talk at the certain time. So they will hold you back from being able to put them up until that point. And I will get into more of that, what happened later on, because
Yeah,
I do have all my notes from the day. It's several pages. Um, so I will get into it. But
there was some jostling. There was definitely some jostling to get to because it's still physical. It's a physical board. You physically stick your things on with bits of blue tack, and you write it in the hand. Which with my handwriting, I'm surprised anyone knew what the hell I was going to present. But
did you actually handwrite yours?
oh yeah, yeah, because I hadn't decided up until about probably excuse me, I hadn't decided until probably about half a day before that I was definitely going to do something because I've been so busy, and it got to the day before, half a day before, and it was and I was like, God, I'm gonna have to travel down the next day, and thank goodness for AI because that really chipped in with at least like the look and feel and the styling on to help me out with that because that's not my strong suit anyway. Um, but yeah, so it got to about halfway through the Friday, and I was like, no, I am going to do something. And so I put together one deck, and then on the train on the way down, I was like, I've got one other thing I want to talk about. So I put together another deck in about 30 minutes. You're going to see the real quality. But yeah, I put together another deck in about 30 minutes on the train on the way down, to bring it up to two. So that's why I hand wrote them because I wasn't certain that I was going to have enough time to create any content, but thankfully I did.
Nice. Yeah, so I believe this was the 10th Measurecamp I've been to personally. Most of the time, the ones I haven't been to since going to my first one, it's always been because it fell on a date which I could not keep free for Measurecamp, or I got sick. But this is the second year in a row that I have actually volunteered, and I have been asking them each year, "Hey, if there's any opportunity for volunteer, I would love to do it." So thankfully, I finally got allowed to volunteer.
I think it's my fifth or possibly sixth. I'm trying to remember.
You've been to everyone since joining the Loop Prize, am I correct?
I think I might have missed 1 year. So I think four since I've been here. I think it's six then. I did
Yeah,
two at Sky. I'm sure I did two at Sky because I remember going to the first one with you, and I think that was at the old place. That wasn't at here.
yeah.
Um, and then I did another one where it was. I think you were there as well, but Nick Redding was there. That might have been one of the years where you couldn't go actually. And then I think I've done four since I've been with Loop. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's the sixth one I've been to.
Yeah, there was one at I think it was at the old one that I couldn't go because I got sick, and I was like, "Nope." I know sharing is caring, but not this time.
That might have been the year I went with Nick. Um, yeah.
Yep, perfect. But yeah, so it they do encourage everyone to present, especially if you're a new person, because they know that anyone who's new will have some new ideas to be able to share.
Well, and it's also community, isn't it? If you've never done it before, it's an experience. It's something to do. If it's people who present at every measure camp going, you need to give new people a chance.
Agree. And that's one of the things that I do think that there needs to be probably some way of monitoring this going forward, just because when we get to the board talk, you'll understand why I'm discussing that, and maybe even having to say, you know what, sorry, only one, you can only present in one of the sessions.
Yeah, I have some views on that as well. I did do two in the end, but I anyway, we'll get to it. But as I felt bad with it to give people a chance because exactly because of that.
Yep. So the first thing is just talk about the day. So not about the session, but what did we think of the day overall? So Matt, I want you to go first, just because I have a different perspective from being a volunteer.
So yeah, I won't give the whole kind of long form spiel, but riding down into the city centre of Leeds at sort of 5 a.m. in the dark on a Saturday, quite good fun. So you're heading down and you get into the station, lock your bike up, and then you're on the train. Writing a deck in 30 minutes on the train was using Copilot was a bit of a new one for me. And then obviously getting down there, everyone's super friendly. You come in, you get laden with merch. I always avoid the merch. You're a merch merchant. You love the merch, but I just, because I'm traveling, I'm always traveling, and it's I just get tired of being encumbered with stuff. And and I've got T-shirts, and I'll pick them up at the end if there's still any. Like, I want to give people a chance to get them, and look, if I don't get them, then that's fine. But I don't want to be carrying them around all day. So I kind of avoided that to begin with, and then I went back later to pick that up. Lots of tea, very important. So just tea after tea, very nice. Everybody's absolutely lovely. The organisers, obviously we all know them. We sponsored. I thought it was last year, 2 years ago. So we know those guys really well. We know them anyway. But the attendees, everybody's really friendly because people are there on a Saturday, giving up their own time. It's a very community driven thing. So everybody's absolutely lovely. Everybody's open for a chat. You just sit down and park yourself next to somebody and get into a conversation with them. You can't kind of the thing is analysts are all introverts, not all, but like quite introverted. So it's very, very difficult. But everyone kind of gets into the spirit of it, and you just put your introversion to the side for a moment or for a day, absolutely knackered by the end of the day, like of having to talk to people who you don't know and your brain's dribbling out of your ears. But everybody kind of puts it to one side, and everybody's really friendly and talkative, and so I really love that. Really well organized, really, really well organized. Like, you can tell that this is the 18th one. It's like clockwork. It's fantastic. So that's superb. What else? Really insightful. Lots of really interesting people talking about things. And I think that's something that's brilliant about it is you can go through your day-to-day job, and this is something I found at Sky, and I still find at Loop, even though I'm dealing with like loads of different clients who do things in different ways. You'll always find somebody who's got a different perspective on something, and it won't be that yours is wrong and theirs is right, or theirs is right and yours is wrong. It's just that there's multiple ways of doing things, and if you can absorb that those ideas, you'll get a huge amount from the day. It's the amount of knowledge and expertise that is being collated together, and these are all people who are in your field. They might be in different aspects of it. They might be like, I'm an implementation guy. It might be an analyst, or it might be a data engineer, or it might be somebody from compliance. It might be somebody from the legal department who's coming because they want to talk about cookies and data collection. You'll get people who are. It might be somebody from marketing. You might be getting people from some of the vendors like your Googles and your Observe Points and Adobes. But the one thing is that there's this the Venn diagram of crossing interests that brings everybody to that place on that day. And so you're always going to learn something. You're always going to get something from it, and that's what I enjoyed.
Yep. So for me, as a volunteer, I got to go in even earlier. So I think I got there just after 7 a.m. and the doors didn't open until about, I think, 8:39. So
It was 8:30. Yeah.
it was 8:30. Yep. So it was just look at what do they need help with, where do they want people stationed, helping the sponsors get in, figure out where they are going to be setting up for the day. And I just got an opportunity to just see everything first. So my first thought was, wow, the type of merchandise that they are giving away this time is amazing. So I absolutely love the fact being bald, having a beanie to keep warm this winter. Actually picked up two.
I got a lovely pink, like pinky purple one. That's what I went for.
And then I decided to volunteer at the front desk helping people get their badges because that's the biggest point where there's going to be a holdup. So we're trying to get enough people over there to be able to help people find their badges. And one of the things that we kept trying to encourage is like, this is all alphabetical order. Just find your name, peel it off, put it on. But they expect us to keep doing it. So we kept doing it because that's what was expected. So I'm thinking maybe we just need to have a sign, just find your name, pull it off, go on, come to us if you need help.
It won't work. It won't work. So what's the what's the famous picture where there's the pavement and it goes down and it cuts across at a 90-degree angle and then people just walk across the grass? It's the path of least resistance. People will be expecting you to do it for them.
Possibly, but I mean, they can find their name a lot quicker, especially considering it's a lot harder sometimes to hear. Okay.
Yeah, but they want you to do it. What are they not paying for?
Exactly. But you and I, we were in touch. I knew you were running late, so I did go ahead, pull your name off, got your badge ready, kept my back pocket just ready for you to walk in. It's like, here you go, sir.
To be clear, thank you for that. That was extremely helpful. That was the smoothest experience. To be clear, I wasn't late insofar as I turned up exactly when I intended to.
Okay. Let me rephrase it. You were late for the morning session.
I was late for the intro. I was late for the intro, but when you're getting up at 5 and you think, well, I could get up at 4. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to get up at 5 and I'm going to come down and I'm going to be late for the morning session and I'm going to be fit for human consumption. Well, no, that. Hang on a minute. Fit for company. I'm going to be fit company for the day rather than trying to get myself out of bed an hour earlier and being a grumpy bastard for the entire day. So yeah, I thought. So yeah, not late. I arrived. I'm like Gandalf. A wizard arrives precisely when he means to.
Yep. So the breakfast I thought was, and this is the thing, they did talk about this. The food this year I thought was better. And that was because all down to the sponsors. The sponsors helped provide better food this year. Because the first thing I realized was we actually had egg sandwiches this time. Not mushroom sandwiches for me. I got an actual egg sandwich.
That's true, actually, because yeah, if you're going for the vegetarian option, because I mean I just eat anything, within reason, like not like cardboard or tiling.
Oh yeah,
But
you're on a seafood diet.
seafood eater, yes.
Yes.
Uh, but no, it's good to know that there were options beyond just shovel things into your face.
Yep. The other thing is, this year I am keeping the brochure. I know you won't be able to see it, but mostly because on the inside they did talk about some digital analytic podcasts that you can listen to, which thankfully they did put ours on there. I mean, I think
it all becomes clear why we're sucking up to them.
well, we sucked up to them last year. We didn't get anything in the podcast.
That's why we got it in this year.
I think it's because I'm on the volunteer section. I suggest that they should put a thing for podcasts so people have something to listen to throughout the year. So there were, I think, 6 or 8 different ones. But 6. I just went into the page and looked. But then the other memorable moment for me was the amount of attention and detail that they did. So the board where you would have, here's the day and people could go up and put their cards to put what sessions they want to talk about. I helped put that up. And the attention to detail that they had on that, it took over a half hour just to get the skeleton up because they wanted to make sure it was lined up perfectly, that whenever you were actually putting the cards up, there's space for everything. So we did move things around quite a bit. So really good attention to detail. And again, we're digital analysts. We do a lot of attention to detail. Well, Matt could question me sometimes on that one. Then finally, it was the time to put the cards up. And I felt like it was a Black Friday sale where we're all lined up, we're ready to get in there. You're hoping you're not going to get stabbed.
Heated on. It wasn't quite that bad, but I was gonna like run in from the back and surf over the top of people or something.
You should just surf crowd and just allow them carry you all the way up.
I think actually one thing I would say is I think, and this is because it's an unconference and you're never quite sure exactly how many people are going to come, but it wasn't very clear that you were only supposed to put one session on to begin with. So because there were people shouting it out, and in fairness, the people are shouting it out, but I think that could have been a little bit clearer, because if they'd have got in with that a little bit earlier, there might have been a bit less, a little less jostling. Because some people were putting up like 3 or 4 sessions, and I'd heard them say no, it's one session to make sure everybody gets a chance, and then if there's any spaces, other people can put another session on. So I'd heard that, and so I just put my one on, and then kind of backed off to see what happened. But there were a lot of people who were trying to put multiple ones on, and then there were people getting angry at them, saying, "No, it's only one session," and they were like, "Is it? I hadn't heard that." So I don't know whether it filtered through to everybody.
I think that is something that can be taken away and look at how to do it. Because one of the things I think would be great is there are certain people who will present every year. I think these people should be able to have an opportunity to submit their cards in advance to make sure that they're spacing these out appropriately and making sure that there is room for it. So I do wonder if there is an opportunity to submit some of these cards in advance. And that way they go, you know what, we know this session is going to have a lot of people. Let's put them in a bigger room, or we know this one's not going to be that big. Let's put them in a smaller room.
I know what you mean, but then it's not an unconference. I think maintaining some of the underlying principles, because I don't mind, like, I don't mind the fact that if someone's doing a session that's that's good, that's going to be huge, I don't mind sticking my card next to that. Like, that doesn't bother me. I think it's more, and they tried to do it, so I'm not
Mm.
giving them any grief about it. They did try. It's making sure that the people who it's their first time, they might be a bit nervous, they might not want to push themselves to the front, making sure that they do get a chance to put something on and to present something if they want to, and that people aren't doing 2, 3, 4 sessions.
I agree with it, but I know that there have been years where someone that you could clearly see that they're going to have a lot more people got a very small room. And there were people just crowding trying to get in. And they will go and talk to someone else, say, actually, you took a room that's going to host 60 people. We know this person's going to get more than 60 anyways.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I think I didn't see too much of that this
Not this
time
year.
round.
This year has been very good.
So some people were swapping things around. So and this kind of comes up. So the reason I was able to do 2 sessions is there was a lady who had put herself on one of the smaller rooms, and then nobody had picked one of the big rooms. So there was like a big room that was empty. I'd held back and I said, right, I'll just do the one session. But then she came to me and said, do you want to take the smaller room? I'm going to go put mine on the big one that nobody wants to do. Because I don't mind with the room being empty. I'm not bothered whether it's empty or not. So I'll move it. And do you want to put your session? Because she knew I had a second one. So that was how I ended up putting a second session on, is because somebody moved theirs and let me put mine on. So that was really kind.
Nice. Yeah. So for me, I knew that I wanted to go into the first one because I did talk at the very last part of my slide that if you want to know more about how to do what I talked about in another tool, go to Matt's session later. So I already called you out on that one. And I was aiming for one of these 2 rooms that were slightly bigger than what I got, but, um, it was a lot of shoving around in the front. So I couldn't get over to that one, so I had to go for a little bit smaller room.
I find with mine, I went for quite small rooms. I think I did one that was like 20, 15 people, and then one that was like 25. Um, and they were pretty full. I think I probably got, do you run it? I probably got about 15 people for both, maybe slightly more on the first session actually. So there were a couple of people standing on the first session. So I think possibly I got a few. Oh, I did it the wrong way around. I should have done the bigger room for the first one and then the smaller room for the second. But it was fine.
Yeah. Well, a little bit of spoiler of mine. Only got 8, but then I found out there was another analyst presenting in the big room in the very first lot that, let's be honest, very few analysts could compete with his name. It was Simo.
Yeah, no, and I was watching those on.
Yep. Oh yeah. I think overall, I think most of the slots were gone in the first 3 minutes.
Yeah, there was very little. There was very little left. It was very jostly.
Yep. And then the very last thing I want to touch was I do love coming here because it is more of a reunion of analysts. So we do get to see a bunch of former Sky colleagues, former Luke colleagues. Unfortunately, there were 2 people I was hoping to meet up with who were unable to join. They knew who they are. They did register. I saw their names on the name badges, but they were not coming.
Unacceptable.
Yep. So let's talk about the sessions that we did attend. So, um, I figured we could just go back and forth. So, what was your first session? What was my first session? So, as I mentioned, the very first session was my own. So, I will be talking about what I learned from that one closer to the end of the podcast. So, Matt, what was your first one?
So I went to watch Simo talk about SGTM, and I've got the sessions up. So I'll just bring it up on my phone, so I can give you the actual title and unsolved problems with server-side tagging. I took a couple of screenshots actually, so I'll grab a couple of things. But it's Simo talking around largely around like the philosophy of SGTM, which seems seems like a funny thing to say, but um, it was interesting. It's like, what's it for? What should you be using it for? Um, are there are there better ways of doing things? So let me just bring this up. Yes, so governance and control of processes, control of services, and basically just talking through the different options that that you have when deploying a server-side implementation and the reasons why you might do so. And essentially, yeah, it's not to get around legislation. It should be done for sensible and legal reasons.
Mhm.
But a really interesting session, and he did a bit of a Lord of the Rings type theme. So there was actually the one I'm looking at is Harry Potter. So we've got the sorting hat up, and he's talking about like control of what is needed, governance, control of services, control of processes, and then a bit of a bit of information around like how data gets processed from one place to another. But it was a good session. It was a good session. So thought provoking and but more kind of thought leadership than technical. It was just talking about the reasons why you might do a server side implementation.
Very nice. I'm really good at I missed that one, but I mean, I was presenting, so I can't attend Simo and present at the same time. I haven't gained that skill yet. So my second one was GA4 anomaly detection and data quality checks at scale by Marco Tognan. So this one I thought was quite interesting because it was matching similar to what my own things were. But with this one, it was about using the power of BigQuery and doing checks at scale. So it's not done in GA4 itself. And the first thing that came to my mind is, well, this means that you're essentially testing on your production data, which means it's already too late because the data is already in, it's already wrong. So it's not so much that it's going to be preventing data going in, but it's more of letting you know, is this data safe to be used right now? So it is a validation tool to understand this. It uses it's called the ARIMA model to check for anomalies and takes into considerations such as seasonality, holiday trends. But one of the things I do think that was quite interesting was he did talk about potential issues behind this at the very end. And he did mention that using daily schema is better to catch issues before it goes into production, which is what I think is a better approach. Now, I've done a lot of reflection in this nearly a month since afterwards, and it's actually quite interesting to use both, where you have the daily schema validation to try to catch as much of upfront, but this to be used to tell you if there's any anomalies that did happen to go in. So you almost have like a double filter going through it. So I do think this was a very interesting one that I actually want to look at how we can implement that more, because I know with one of our clients, I am using not BigQuery because this is Adobe, but I mean using Report Builder to do like a more of a health check to see if there's potential issues.
I like the idea of that as well. I think there were a couple of things, a couple of people I spoke to. It might have been the same guy actually, but it was I like, and we're going to get onto data-less schema validation, but I like data-less schema validation because it picks up problems up front and it does it during your development process. But I also think that the what's the word, metaphor, simile, the simile that I use is, it's like the little kid's toy where you've got the sheet with the circle hole and the square hole and the star hole, and then you try to push oblong through and it won't go because it's not the right shape. Schema validation on the front end does that, but then schema validation as the data is ingested can be just as powerful, if not more powerful, because as the data is ingested, you can set up rules. So at the moment, like schema validation on the front end, it will give you an error. And I know you're going to talk about schema validation in a minute, but it'll throw an error in the console, or you can pick up a JavaScript error and then you can analyze it. But if you've got schema validation on ingestion, you can then triage that data. So let's say something doesn't meet the schema, you can triage it off to a separate table so it doesn't infect your production data, or you can trigger an alert or something. So yeah, I like kind of, you have schema validation at collection, schema validation in transit, which is what we were just talking about. And then additionally, you've got schema validation at rest, which is you take your historic data and you run your schema over the top of it and say, does everything that we've collected historically meet the schema as well? So I think there's multiple places where you could use validation of that type, and you tweak them so they do different jobs.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's the exact same thing I was thinking about. It's almost like you have a net where the daily validation, schema validation is catching everything up front, but for those smaller issues, you now have something that you can shift through and try to catch them that way.
And I really like the sort of automated rule thing. I know I mentioned it, but that automated triage of, we've got data, it doesn't meet the thing, we're going to quarantine it till we can look at it, find out why it's wrong, and then we might push it back in, or we might not. We might choose to delete it. But I like the fact that if it's at the ingestion layer and at the at rest layer where you run your schema over the top of it, you could say, well, when you find something that doesn't match, pull it out, remove it, go stick it somewhere else, and we'll analyze it, find out why it's wrong. We might put it back, or we might not. Well, you can't do that at the collection stage. You can only do that at the ingestion or the at rest stage. So yeah.
All right. And what was your second session you went to?
So my second session was enhancing Condé Nast's compliance methodology with Snowplow. So I went to that one because I know I saw that Lee Kim was one of the people who was presenting it, and I know Lee Kim, so I went to go sort of support her and her presentation. But actually, it was really interesting. So they took us through their compliance journey from maybe 2 years ago, where they thought they were compliant, but possibly weren't. I think bits of the session, are supposed to remain a Measurecamp, so you have to be careful. But there was room for improvement, and then what they did to get that improvement was really, really innovative. So there was updating the consent management platform, But one of the really interesting things that they did, and it's something I've never really seen before, was they have Snowplow that is feeding data in to a backend, and I think distributing it to multiple sources. And there is a certain element of collection that is acceptable under certain consent circumstances. So there's a certain element of collection that's okay for analysis and statistics. But then there's another element of collection that's only okay if you've also consented to targeting. And what they've done with Snowplow, and Snowplow have built out a service to deliver this, is it doesn't just do a blanket block. It doesn't just say, well, you can either send it or not send it. It edits the data stream. So before the data leaves the user's browser, it will remove whatever elements don't apply to that consent state. So let's say you had a data packet that was going to Snowplow that contained clickstream type data, just behavioral stuff, and then contained personal information, but the user hadn't consented to the personal information bit. It will strip out the personal information before the stream even leaves the device. So there's no gray area, because sometimes you can say, well, we'll control it from a downstream usage perspective. So we'll send the data, and then if we're not allowed to do A/B testing, for example, but we are allowed to do analytics, we'll block the data from going to the A/B testing tool, and we'll just send the data onto the analytics tool, which is something that we've done before, where you control it at the server-side orchestration level. But what was really clever about this, and more aligned to something like ePrivacy and PECR, is the data just doesn't even leave the device. It's client side is controlling that and blocking the stuff that is. It's categorizing data by consent grouping, and then stopping that data from even leaving the device if it doesn't meet that consent group. Really, really cool. Really cool. If compliance can be cool, but that's about as cool as it gets.
I agree. I think it sounds very interesting from an analyst point of view, because I mean that is exactly what we do. We try to do data collection in a compliant manner. So I think anything dealing with compliance is cool.
Well, it was just a super interesting tool, and they built it. And I think categorizing data, literally data point by data point, categorizing it by consent group, and then controlling it to that level, I just think is an extremely interesting and innovative approach. So yeah, I like it.
I agree. So my third session was When Data Talks, But Nobody Listens: How to Present with Confidence by Parveen Downer. And this one is a session that was not what I thought going into it. There was no slide decks, and there was a lot of audience participation. In a way, it's almost like a therapy session where you're like, we're not alone. Other people have the exact same problems that we have. Um, but one thing that she pointed out is your pitch changes based on who you are talking to and how you present the data. So they she picked out a couple people and said, okay, talk about something that was very innovative that you've done. Okay, now how would you explain that to a marketer? How would you explain that to a C-suite? And you could see how they were changing the same thing. They still talk about the exact same project, but they changed how they were talking about based off of who they were imagining they were presenting to. One thing that she talked about was you should act big and pretend if needed for your confidence. Breathe and calm down. Relax your shoulders. So just different ways of being able to relax yourself before you present. And they had a circle that talked about how everything is reciprocal. So you have your action leads into confidence, and your confidence leads into competence, and your competence leads into your action. So it's just keep going. It's a competence lead to your action leads into confidence, and your confidence leads back to competence. So if you need to enter the circle at any point, you gotta start off where you have control in, which is your own actions. And then they mentioned confidence changes based on the seniority in the room, but what you have to remember almost everyone has the exact same thing. So we have more in common than not. The only thing that separates us is just our job title. I always like to say, everyone puts on their trousers one leg at a time. I know you're speaking Go, Matt, but you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. I was saying not on like Wallace. I get them set up and just dive straight in.
Well, see, not all of us are as agile as you are.
I'm known for my agility.
Yep.
Renowned.
So that was my third session. How about you, Matt?
So after the Condé Nast session, I had wanted to go to one, but I ended up catching up with they came after that. So I actually didn't do that. So actually, I only did 3 sessions in the day. So my final session, because I then had my 2 sessions in between.
Mhm.
My final session for the day that I went to was Tom Milne from ITV. Who was I went through because I was interested, obviously, with having worked at Sky, and I met Tom at the bit where we were all putting the cards up, and he said he wasn't sure whether he was going to put one up. I can't remember if he said that he presented before. I'm not sure. I think he might have been. I think it might have been his first time presenting. But maybe not. Maybe not. But he said he certainly said he wasn't sure he was going to present anything that at this one. And so we were chatting about it back and forth, and I was really interested because he was at ITV, and obviously I've been at Sky around IoT analytics
Mhm.
and tracking on set-top boxes. And I said I think that would be a really, really interesting thing to do a session on this to start, because I don't think people are even aware that internet connected set-top boxes are tracking in the same way that the web and app are tracking. So I said I think that would be a really interesting session. So hopefully, I'm not taking credit for it, but hopefully that I was at least a small piece of convincing him to do a session, and he did. So I saw that he put his name up, so I went to go see him, and so it was 3 fiendish questions from streaming and TV analytics, and Max, for our former Sky colleague, was in there as well. So I think that probably he'd seen that and thought, oh, it's set-top boxes. Let's go and have a look. And it was just a really informal session, with everyone just kind of chatting. But with Tom, he put a slide deck together, and it was posing some interesting questions around what are the best ways of delivering content in a streaming device, in a set-top box or a streaming service. And so I can't remember absolutely everything. But either way, if you got one right or yours was the best answer, you got a chocolate. So that I enjoyed that. I didn't get the best answer, but I just went and nicked a chocolate anyway at the end of the session, which was fine. I was told that was okay. I didn't just go and do it. But yeah, there was questions like, what's the best amount of time to give between the end of one program, the counter that says your next program will start in X, like what's the best time? Because different streaming services do it differently. And so he was talking about stuff like that, and just understanding how you might use behavioral analytics in streaming devices to an A/B testing and feature flagging and things like that. Because I always remember the way that Spotify do things in the app, where everything's kind of tested. It's this agile testing thing where everything's behind a feature flag, and so you can switch them on, switch them off, and you can split your users and so on. And of course, on streaming devices, everybody's logged in. You don't necessarily know that the person watching is the person whose profile is logged in, because it might be like the number of times that I'm on, my BBC profile and we're watching Bluey because it's the kids. But it's still my profile. So it must confuse the hell out of the BBC, because like sometimes it's Bluey and sometimes it's Match of the Day. It's like, God, this 4-year-old really likes football, and this 42-year-old absolutely loves kids programs. But hopefully they've got the dead center. to figure that one out, and they realized that it's the other way around. But it was really interesting session around just streaming services and content delivery services, and what are the most important metrics and the kinds of challenges that they face. I thought it was really cool.
Well, I think we all want to know, what is the best countdown timer time?
It depends. And there you
See,
go.
that's a swear word at Measurecamp. Did you know? You put yourself back on mute.
Oh, sorry. I think possibly they're it's because I've got a bit of a cough, so I'm sort of like my throat's itching, so I'm trying not to splutter all over everything. But yes, I think it depends. It depends on the content. It depends on who's watching and their attention span. It depends on the length of the program. It depends on whether you've got adverts in the program or not. It's like there's so many different factors. So that's the interesting thing about it, of course.
Well, for me, the two things. One, when it comes to the countdown timer, I will say I hate any countdown timer which comes on when there's still more things that's happening on the screen.
That was raised. So there's one provider, I can't remember who it was, that knows whether or not there are post credits, and if there are post credits, they wait, and if there aren't post credits, and I think that's literally just somebody having to go through and check and confirm when there's post credits or not. Although I'm sure there's an AI element to it as well, but there's one provider that does it, and then there's one provider that doesn't, and just cuts through to the next program, and everybody agreed that that's really annoying.
Yep. But I will always remember that I was invited to speak at the Adobe Summit regarding doing Roku app implementation. And that was before Adobe even had a Roku web SDK that you can use to be able to do anything.
Yeah. I remember doing individual code generated API calls out. But this is the thing about cross pollination of ideas, because you will recall that we do that with one of our clients, where we do code generated API calls, or HTTP requests in this case, rather than to the API service, but it's essentially the same thing.
Yep.
Where you build the image request from scratch and send it in a web scenario, because the web page in question was a sensitive page, and so you had to be in full. You couldn't load a tag manager, or indeed an SDK for the like a JavaScript library for the web. You had to build mechanically the image request, because it had to be that locked down. Everything had to be controlled by the development team in order to send it. Where do you think the idea came from? It's
Exactly.
doing exactly that 5 or 6 or 7 years earlier on a set-top box.
Yep. I did that on the set-top box, and then when I was at Investec, we had a whole section where they refused any third-party JavaScripts on there.
And so
Yep, and I will say the level that we went down onto that one is incredible.
Hmm.
But, I mean, it took a long time to get that up and running.
Yeah. But
Oh.
it's the ideas, it's the initial ideas. And this is back to the point of going to meet people who do the same thing that you do, but in a slightly different space or in a slightly different way, and then getting those ideas and bringing them together, and being open to the fact that you might not know everything, and absorbing that, because that's an example of where we've taken something from a set-top box environment that we'd learned years earlier, and then we got a situation, somebody presented us with a new problem, which is, this is a secure area, you're not allowed to load JavaScript libraries, and we went, yeah, we've got a solution to that. That's fine.
Yeah. So, earlier, when you were mentioning the ITV one, you mentioned that Max Liggett was in there. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing his last name correctly.
I'm sure he'll tell us if we're wrong.
Well, I'll know, because I did talk to him after attending his session, that he agreed to be a future guest on the podcast, because he was talking about what he had learned about AP, CGA, and RT CDP.
That's
So-
a lot of letters.
Yeah, a lot of abbreviations. And I when I go to any that he is doing because he does have a lot of information, and he's also one of the few other people besides me who talks about Adobe at the Measurecamp, because there's not a lot of Adobe specialists that do attend.
Fewer every year.
Yes. But one thing he talked about was the process about moving on to one of these. There's a lot more work upstream, so it's more important to planning, more important at the planning phase than previously when you were on the at measurement. So CGA focuses and understands more on the past. CDP looks more at the future and monitoring now, and AEP is more of the bedrock that encompasses both of them. So how the data is nested in the schema is very important. CDP is pre-manipulated data, so it's good for daily, weekly, lifetime. It only needs really what is the latest data. But this is one of the things I really don't want to go into a lot, because I do want to get him to come on and actually present this on a podcast, and we could discuss it a lot more, because he has become one of the key analysts in this area.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can also tell us that we're pronouncing his name wrong, which will be
Exactly.
Yeah.
And just because you didn't attend any other sessions, I have attended more, so I'm going to just go through more rapid fire now. Not interesting enough, the next person also mentioned that he would would like to be a featured guest on this podcast. So, for him, it was an open source GTM alternative by Alexander Kurtzel. Now, this isn't blam set technical, so I'm not going to go into great ballpark on this one, but I would love to get him on to talk more around what was his thought about creating an open source GTM. So, um, I just I'm just really curious because I want to know, like, did you do this because you can, or is there actual benefits for a large scale company to go open source? Is this just for technical developers, or could there be a friendly UI for a division of labor? How easy would it be to standardize the solution with this? There's just so many questions I have on this, but he did have a website.
Well,
Uh,
I can see. I mean, yeah, definitely check the website up on the on the podcast links. But the immediate advantage I could see is like where we're talking about, the Munich ruling. I think we spoke about last time.
Yeah.
Something like that, where network requests are being sent over to the US to retrieve a JavaScript library from Google. If you've got a self-hosted open source GTM, that's not a problem anymore, is it?
It's not, but I mean, he started off by just saying GTM is annoying. Hence, he started this.
I quite like GTM.
Yeah.
I know you've been finding it annoying recently, but I quite enjoy it.
Let's be honest. You cannot tell me that not once this week you did not complain about GTM.
I don't think I did complain about GTM, did I? What have I complained about GTM for?
When you realize why one of your rules were not being triggered. The random number one for the daily push.
Oh, the one where that wasn't complaining. That was more just an observation.
But come on. Could you not also complain about it?
Yeah, maybe I was. I'm claiming innocence now after the fact.
Yes.
What was selective amnesia?
But for those who are not going to go in the show notes, his website is elbwalker. So ELBWALKER.com. So that's the website. The sixth one was interesting because the title just really got me. It was Server-Side Circus. Watch me try to build full end-to-end server-side setup in 15 minutes by Annie Salo. So she is the CEO of this company whose tool created where they could actually get an entire server-side implementation up and running on a website in 15 minutes. She literally set a timer and had slide decks that was saying, okay, we're going to do this. Now we're going to do this. Now we're going to do this. And you watched them do it from start to finish. And I just thought it was amazing. It was the main thing here is that anyone can deploy server-side technology on the site easily, especially if you can pay for one of these tools.
Was it like an adding well or a Stape? Was it one of those guys?
Nope. Something else.
Ah. Go on, tell us what it was. You got it.
I will have to go pull up and look up the name again.
Dig it out, and we'll give them a shout out later in the.
Yeah, I'll put it into the show notes. I'll
Yeah.
link directly to the company. But it's one of the things where it's essentially if you an agency will cost more upfront to get you up and going, but there will be less long-term cost because you're not paying them to maintain these servers and stuff. While this one is going to be, you're going to be paying them on a monthly basis to do this. So there is a benefit for going down the side. The question is just at what point is the size of your traffic do you go, it's better to just pay an agency to do this.
Yeah.
Mhm. The seventh session was GA4 custom events and event schema documentation by Hawa Taladia. Um, this one was interesting just because of something that happened later in the session in my mind. So she inherited the original solution and created 7 standardized event parameters required for all GA4 custom events because they were moving from UA to GA4. And she was like, you know what? I'm going to standardize this right up front. Now, out of the 7, only 1 was ever optional. Now, she did this through Google Sheets, and it was one of the things that they called out later on when during Q&A was it was great to see, like, you actually have the actual JIRA ticket right there, and when was the last time was this checked and validated? So everything was on this Google Sheet. It was very lengthy. But funny enough, one of the people that was in the room did the original implementation of the site, and he commented like, "Yeah, I did the original one for this on UA. I'm glad to see that it's all in good hands."
That's great.
Yep.
Which again, the whole community thing is just, the guy who did the original build comes to your session about how you repurpose the build.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I mean, it was no longer it's something brand new because it was from UA to GA4, and as we all know, GA4 is not UA.
So
Now the A session, I went to just because I love the name. It was "Iframes are a pain, but they do not have to be" by Camille Bigos. I wish I could talk more about this, but unfortunately, someone did come up to me and they needed some help as I am a volunteer, so I went to go take care of that by the time I got back. And keep in mind, it was only about 8 minutes into the last session of the day. They were already done.
yeah,
So there's not much I could
quick
talk
one.
about. So, um, sorry, Camille. But it was, let's be honest, kind of like a meeting. It was short, sweet, to the point. Everyone was happy. Done.
Perfect.
All right. So those were all the sessions I went to.
Good stuff.
Was there any key takeaways for you from the day?
Um, well, like I say, I really enjoyed the the Condé Nast compliance piece. I think that's a very, very interesting approach and something I would like to look into. Um, so that was extremely interesting. And then I did have a couple of very interesting conversations with people. So the thing that we were talking about around data validation as it's ingested. Um, I spoke to somebody and they were telling me about. Hang on, I'm pretty sure I've still got it up here somewhere. Avo. So avo.app which is a tool that will help you validate data as it comes in. So it kind of sits as this filtration layer. So that was a really interesting conversation. So that was a great takeaway. The other great takeaway was my new hoodie. So that was good. And then other than that, my primary takeaway was just enjoyment of seeing some old friends, old colleagues, a mixture of both, and meeting new people. I think that's one of the things about like the reason why it's such a good idea. This is a takeaway. The reason why it's such a good idea to do a session is because people you don't know will come to your session, and then you can go. Then they will come and talk to you and give you alternate ideas. So mine was schema validation, and someone came up to me and told me about the Arvo tool. And then similarly, the reason it's a good idea to go and watch other people's sessions is you can go do that to them. So there you go. Some key takeaways from me.
Yep. So for me, the two sessions that stood out the most will be Marco Tognan, where doing the validation after it came in at scale using BigQuery. I thought afterwards, I really thought about, I was thinking, that was actually a really neat tip and one that I would love to implement more. And the other one was Max's, just because, once again, not a lot of Adobe talks out there, so it was something that I got to really take away more on. But to talk about more about Matt, one of the things I love is whenever I do these sessions, I do put up my QR code for LinkedIn. I had everyone scan it to connect, and now I have more of a connections and building out more of my network.
Yeah, great. Really good.
Yep. All right. Well, the last few bits, let's just actually present our sessions, because one of the things that Matt and I talked about was we're not going to go to either ones in Measurecamp. So I was going to go first, and then I'll allow you to go through your two.
Okay.
And it also makes sense because my session was actually first on the day.
Before we do that, can I have a wee?
Go for it.
Again, we don't need timers to check out all
Well,
of
no.
my prostate and all the rest. But yeah, let's do. I'll be back. I'll be back.
Yeah. There could be a doctor here. They could give you some analysis, some feedback.
45.3 seconds, and that says to me that you need a rectal exam. Anyway, I shall return.
Don't worry. I'll go stretch and I'll call this out. Don't worry.
All right, see you in a sec.
I ain't cutting a damn thing.
I also, to throw people off who may have been timing it, I've also got myself another beer. So
I promise you, the only person who was able to time how long you took a wee for was me, because all of that's going to be cut out.
you got your stopwatch. That's in your other hand. You've ruined the mystique now. I was going along with the joke, and then you just
mentioned that some of that time that you were gone was to get a beer. So if it was 39.7, it was actually probably closer to 25 seconds, because you needed that time to be able to get it in to get back. And hopefully you washed your hands, but we would never know.
So this is incredibly quick for a man of my age. Anyway,
Exactly. For any age.
Kudos where it's due.
Don't worry, anything that is being talked right here is going to be put in a blooper reel. But I was just going to mention it because I'm in the living room. Unfortunately, the chairs in the living room do not have the same type of cushion I would have at my work desk. So I did need a stand to, one, give my knees a break, and two, to give my butt a break.
Yes.
That I definitely want to leave in, because I do want to have a podcast clip of me talking about my butt. We are now recording again. Technically, we were always recording, but I'm going to cut out a lot of that in the middle, and we're going to finally go into our sessions.
Well, hopefully you use this as an opportunity, dear listener, to relieve yourselves as well.